Okay, welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. I'm Jen Kelly, and I'm joined by Ken, Paul, and Dan today. Now, the topic we're talking about today is COVID reopenings. Now, we're recording this during the spring of 2021 when some parts of North America are experiencing great success with reopenings, while others remain very, very locked down. So, how is a business owner supposed to make marketing, advertising, promotion decisions when operating in such an uncertain environment? So on the panels today, we have a good mix of marketing consultants from various areas in North America. So you get different points of view depending on what the current state of reopenings are in their area. And this discussion will help cover the landscape of how to get back to it if you're in the area of the world that is enjoying somewhat normal, back to normal operations, versus those still constrained by restrictions. So we'll dive into the various areas of marketing to get insights and opinions, and you'll leave with some really valuable tips and advice. So we'll get started. Ken, I want to pass the first question to you. So if you were to advise a small business owner on ways to get some quick wins this month, regardless of their local COVID situation, what would you recommend?
Yeah. Thanks, Jen. So I think that's the easiest question you could have asked me. It's really simple. Go back to your list. And if you haven't pulled together a list, do so. Go through your emails, go through your accounting system, go through your Facebook contacts or your LinkedIn contacts and build a list of people who have done business with you in the past. And then reach back out to them and ask them to come back and do business with you again. You have to realize, it's a really broad gamut. A lot of businesses can still operate fairly normally and have been able to operate fairly normally because of the classification. Maybe they've been deemed an essential service, but there are also businesses that have been almost nearly or completely shut down, and specifically even for specific time frames. So your list is your friend. It is the most valuable asset that you have from a marketing perspective. Start putting together a regular email newsletter. Send out an offer to get people to come back into your place of business. Let them know how you're able to operate right now. If you need help, ask them, because they know your business. They want to support you. Everybody gets it. So your email or your text message marketing list is your best asset. Getting your existing and past customers to come back and buy from you again is always the easiest in any economy, but especially now. And so I can't stress that enough. The second thing that I would add to that is, if you don't really have a list, start building a list and do it now. And find something that you can give people of value that gets them to want to opt into your list. And it may be that you maybe you have to offer a deal. Maybe you have to give them a buy one, get one. Maybe you have to give them a free consultation. Maybe you have to give them, something. It has to be valuable to the people you're trying to reach out and build your list. So if you don't have a list, you got to start building a list. And that's the best thing you could do right now.
Oh, that's great advice. Now, Dan, you've been working with several clients who are launching new divisions, new businesses, new companies, new offers during the pandemic. What have you seen that may be good advice for companies considering the same move, but may think during the pandemic is no time to launch something new?
I actually think during the pandemic is exactly the time to launch something new. I think we're doing it right now at Caliber, as you know, Jen. It's definitely something where, we just did this with our marketing manager mentor program. We're doing it probably next month with our exceptional tribe community. We're launching a podcast, for different non-marketing people. And all these things, it wasn't like I planned it, but it just kind of happened. And the thing is that, you just have to keep that engine going anyway. It's, to me, pandemic or no pandemic, you have to make yourself a client when you're serving other people. And we forget to do that. So my advice would be is, I think if anything, this is a great time to do it. It's not a great time, but it's a great time to do it because you have a somewhat more captive audience of people who are probably still at home. They're not in an office. They are working away, but their attention is probably a little bit better than if they had a bunch of distractions. So, this is a good time to start educating. The thing that I literally wrote about this, I think yesterday or the other day on LinkedIn, though, you have to be cognizant of the fact that there's some education to be had. There's a know and a like and a trust phase of what you're rolling out. So do not go like gangbusters, after you've done the list that, Ken just wisely told you to build. Now is not the time to suddenly be like, hey, buy this right now and start to, jump right into something. You got to whet their appetite, get them excited about what it is that you're about to launch. Maybe if it's one-on-one, ask them some questions about, what's going on in their world. Hey, I thought you might want to check this out when we launch it, that kind of thing. Nothing wrong with having some VIPs, but, that's really what I would do is put some energy into ramping up, but don't wait to ramp up. Don't talk about it anymore. This is not the time to start talking. This is not the time to start doing meetings endlessly of things that you're never going to launch. Just get it out there. And as you're getting it out there, though, the education has to be consistent.
So you mean you can't skip the know and like and jump right to trust?
I'm seeing no and then somehow skipping like, trust, and try. Like, okay, you know us, and now you should buy from us. Like,
yeah.
That seems to be the
interesting
common mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Dan,
that's really the thing is, Ken, like you said, that list is such gold, and you don't want to. Nobody's perfect, but you don't want to, mess it up. That these are people who are probably on your side. They don't want to be hit up right away in the first email about, buy our stuff. It's new. So,
yeah. If I can just jump in there, I mean, I do think, challenging times you always create opportunities if you're open to that. And, whether it's retooling your business, I think back a year ago and everybody was trying to figure out what's going on, and it was a little too early for any of us to really start taking steps a year ago. But shortly after that, by April or May, people started to realize, okay, there is still a desire for people to do business in this economy, but we have to change the way we do things. And so even if you're not launching something new, you may be launching a new way of doing something. And so like for us, working with a lot of painters or home remodelers, they needed to start offering virtual estimates, where using technology, Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, to be able to have their potential customer or client show them, the project that they were thinking about, and then they could have a two-way conversation where they didn't have to meet face to face. And so, that's an example I saw with a lot of our existing clients. But, also for my business, while we were fortunate and we had a really good year, I used it as an opportunity to go back and look at everything we're doing, everything I'm spending money on. Does that continue to make sense? All the way from office space to tool sets that we're using. Because again, difficult times, can create just massive opportunities, but you've got to be prepared to seize them.
Mm, very true. Dan, just on that too, you mentioned something about a VIP offer. I just wanted to jump in and say to folks, if you're launching something new, don't hesitate to launch a beta version of it, even if it's not software, because you will be surprised how many people really want to get into something early. And, if you talk about it being a beta version or a dress rehearsal for our launch, for our offer, folks are really willing to weather some of the bumps as you figure out your offer in exchange for being first in there. So it's another thing to consider. It attracts a certain type of personality that wants to be first. And oftentimes the very same kind of personality loves to give you feedback. So it can be really great to smooth out your offer.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely use it. You know, we do it this way right now. We use our LinkedIn company page a lot of times for that stuff because, you know, even if we had like a lot on there, you know, we got a pretty fair amount, but we still use that for, hey, special circle, you know about this before the rest of the world on LinkedIn does. So let's say there's 500 people that follow you for your company. Well, it sounds like a lot, but let's say though on your regular LinkedIn, you got like 3,500 people that follow you. Suddenly you're giving it to a select number. And again, it's not like every person is going to say, okay, sign me up. So, you know, use those special circles of your channels and slice off a piece for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And go for it, right? No
Go
excuse.
for it. No,
And now, Paul, there's no time like now to get one's digital marketing technical house in order. So are there two things you'd advise business owners to either check on or implement now that they've been pushing off?
Yeah, there's a few things actually. You had mentioned in the show notes about an SSL certificate. If you don't have an SSL certificate by now, you have a problem. But from a technical standpoint, I would say Search Console and analytics are two things, and that goes kind of specifically to your website, and talk about that a little bit more later in the podcast. But you have to have data about what your business and what your website presence is doing, and those are two free tools that you can use. You may need some help getting them set up and understanding the data that's coming out of them, but definitely you have to know what's going on with your website and make sure you're tracking things. And this kind of goes back to what Ken was talking about your list and building that list. Is that people they'll do a direct mail campaign, but they won't use a call tracking number. So you don't know where that call came from necessarily. They'll run Facebook ads, but they're not using that to build a retargeting list. And like I said, it goes back to what Ken talked about, is how important the list is. And there are ways to build that list, but you have to make sure you have that stuff in place.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a great point, Paul. You know, not all lists require getting an email address or a cell phone number. You know, remarketing lists are incredibly powerful.
Just on that, Paul, could you explain what an SSL certificate is if we have some folks in the audience that are just hearing that term and then tuning out?
Yeah, sure. Do you want your eyes to glaze over?
Give us explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old.
Okay, it stands for Secure Socket Layer. And basically what it does, it encrypts the data from your browser to the receiving browser. So that's probably as simple as I can put in. There's different SSL protocols, different versions of it, but basically it's an encryption protocol to make sure that the data you're sending across that digital road, for lack of a better term, is secure.
And it's about $100 or so per year. I mean, it's not expensive, right?
It's not. And a lot of hosting providers, especially some of the more premium ones like what we use, they offer it free. Let's Encrypt has made a large headway into providing free SSL certificates for non-enterprise level websites.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even if a business owner is not necessarily selling anything off of their website, excuse me, it's important to have that because Google's looking for that, bringing up in search results.
Google is giving preference to SSL, and it's HTTPS, and if you'll see that in your browser, and with Google and a lot of browsers, it will flat out say not secure. And it goes back to privacy. If someone is filling out a form on your website, you're collecting personal information. And Google wants that to be, well, in the privacy acts in a lot of states now, they want that data to be secured. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean that your website in and of itself is necessarily secure. That's something different. This is the data being sent between your website as an endpoint and another endpoint which like another website.
I gotcha. I feel we have another topic coming on for a future podcast, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
That'll have a big
Well,
audience.
and you know, we've talked about know, like, and trust. I mean, if somebody goes to your website and the browser that they're using says it's not secure, what do you think that means for their level of trust with your business? So
They're probably going to leave. I certainly would.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's a website that I absolutely don't know, I absolutely would leave. If it's a website that I know, maybe I might stick around, but still, you know, and what's interesting is, you know, it's not, like Paul said, it doesn't secure your website. It doesn't prevent it from being hacked. Doesn't it prevent it from having malicious code placed on the website? It literally is just a mechanism to make sure that the data is secure as it's transmitted from your browser to the end destination. But it is an important factor for search ranking in the eyes of Google, and so you better do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ken, I asked you before about some short-term wins. Let me turn the tables and ask you about something longer term. So think 12 months out. Is there any recommendations you have for business owners to be, starting certain marketing strategies that will carry them out over the next 12 months of, frankly, uncertainty?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a perfect time to make sure you're putting systems in place. As Paul talked about, measuring and tracking systems. I'm a big fan of putting together marketing automation and CRM systems as well, because just because you have a list and maybe you occasionally send out an email campaign or a text message campaign, you want to formalize that process. And you also want to build out, nurture campaigns to help you stay top of mind, whether that's a once a month email newsletter that you're sending out, or a weekly newsletter, whatever the right cadence is. You don't want to burn your list. You want to monitor and track, as Paul was talking about. You want to look at the analytics to make sure you're not sending too many emails and turning people off and either having them unsubscribe, or mark them as spam. But you also want to be able to take full advantage of the list that you've built and start, email and text messages work best when they're delivered in context of what somebody's expecting to receive. And so, having a system in place where you can tag people based on what they've purchased from you in the past or what they've downloaded from your website to express interest in maybe the type of service that you have to offer is super important. So I think really, building systems and that includes a marketing system. And so if you haven't gone through the process of doing a strategy analysis of your business, not only, business processes as well as marketing systems, I think, to the extent that your business can afford to do so, I think it's the ideal time to do so. Again, this is the time in a tough economy. This is the time where you've got to squeeze out every inefficiency you've got in your organization. You've got to understand every system that you've got going on. If you're paying people to do work on projects that are not profitable, you're running into potential danger really fast and in an economy like this, and it's going to expose you very quickly. So maybe you're not working with the ideal customers you have. Maybe you're not selling them or selling enough of the right products or solutions that are the most profitable for you. So, that's all going to come back down to looking at marketing strategy. And then, just making sure you have operational systems in place, whether it's and systems to measure and track, because often you can't make good decisions about what's working well if you don't have data to back it up. And so, that's one of the reasons why I'm really intrigued with the whole Fix This Next book that's out there by Mike Michalowicz, and why I got certified on it, because, you have to identify the true problems that are holding your business back. And if you're just making a decision on your gut and you're not making decisions based on data, you're probably going to be making some decisions that are not right. You might get lucky on some of the things, but the more data you have in a data-driven decision-making process, the better. So that's what I would tell people to do, is start working on that. I'm a big fan of bootstrapping, is what I refer to it. You've got to start focusing on things that are going to drive income into your business. But at the same time, you can't neglect those longer term, bigger issues that are facing your business. And so you've got to find that kind of delicate balance. And that's why I think, going back to your list, asking them, even if it's help, to say, hey, if you're a restaurant, for example, hey, I know you guys can't come in and eat, in the restaurant the way you guys used to, or maybe you're not comfortable doing that, or maybe you're even prohibited from doing that. They can still buy takeout. They can still buy gift cards. They can still promote and share your business across social media. You just have to ask. So you've got to use that, but then you've also got to figure out, okay, now from those people who have shown me that they're willing to help my business, what can I do? How can I continue to add value and help them? And if you don't have a system to measure and track that, you may burn them out.
Mm.
Jim, I'm just going to throw something in here too that I think is important for folks to really look at themselves and say, am I strong in this, and should I be doing it? As far as, let's take marketing, for example. And I've been no holds barred about this. I don't think people most of the time should be doing their own marketing. And I don't, and I won't apologize for it, because they don't spend, it's not a strength of theirs. They didn't go to school for it. They haven't done they don't have any experience in it. And they might have maybe, listened to certain things here to get insights like us, but that does not mean that suddenly they are a marketer. And the problem is that when they start to do that and start to think they're a marketer, they take time away from new business development. They take time away from client service. And then they make the mistake of saying, well, then I shouldn't do marketing. And that is so wrong, because what you should be doing instead is taking those hours and saying, who can I get help from, even on a limited basis? I was talking to a guy a few days ago, and he said, oh, I'm doing something for a certain number of hours for writing blogs and stuff. And I said, that's 4 hours that you could have been doing something that was for new business development. And I can't wear that hat for you, but I can wear the marketing hat for you and work with you and collaborate with you. So people should not necessarily look at these things as an either or, but be honest with themselves about their strengths. This is not, nor has it ever been, a time for somebody to say, I can do it myself. No, you can't. Right. None of us can. None of us can do marketing. People can't do all this themselves. So what makes you think you can do marketing yourself? You can't.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do it. So stop living that lie. Give it to somebody who can actually help you do this stuff and divide and conquer. And that's how you're going to get back on your feet. And that's what I believe, no holds barred.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Dan. As a matter of fact, another alternative that I see is, if they're not trying to do it themselves, they're trying to hire somebody, to do something on the cheap, or to do something that's just purely tactical driven, like hiring a social media manager. Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people realize that they can actually hire, an outsourced marketing company to deliver a comprehensive marketing solution for them at a price point that is at the same or less than what they would pay for a full-time person that really is probably only good at doing one or two things, and a really a one-dimensional marketing tactic or set of tactics. So yeah, that's a great point.
And yeah, don't kid yourself. You're not going to hire somebody and then say set it and forget it. Oh, they've got that. Don't even think that. You're still going to have to look them over their work. You're still going to have to manage them. So This idea that suddenly, I'm going to hire this junior person, or I'm going to give it to an admin and that they'll take care of it. Really? Like, are you going to be, number one, that hands off with your own brand? And number two, if you aren't going to be hands off, which is what you should be, then you're going to have to oversee some of that person's work anyway. So if you're going to have that, and you're going to be able to hire somebody who's probably less than that full-time person, like from the outside, then and at a senior level, then it's at least something you should have a conversation on to see how this can work a little bit better, because it can.
Yeah. Well, and another very practical element of that is, if you hire somebody now, I mean, there may be some COVID relief programs in the U.S. I'm not sure how Canada's set up, where maybe there's a benefit where you're hiring somebody, but then if you have to lay them off, now you're going to be looking at potentially at unemployment insurance and things like that. And maybe that's not quite the same as it has been, with some of the COVID relief programs that are out there. But you know what? If you hire a marketing company and you decide your cash flow just drops and you just need to kind of hunker down and, just go back to a really tight word of mouth type of a business, it's, you can fire a marketing agency and do it on the spot and do it immediately, maybe 30 days out or whatever, depending on the nature of the agreement you have. But you're not going to have to worry about that ongoing cost of paying unemployment security or insurance or things like that. So there are practical reasons why you want to outsource in this economy too.
100%.
Both positive and negative. And I say that, that exposes us, but that's the nature of the beast. So
for sure. Yeah. Let me do the positives on that. Hey, Ken. So the positives on that, well, you can let us go with 30 days notice. No, wipe your hands of it if it needs to come to that. Also to onboarding us. Typically, we're going to ramp up a lot faster than a full-time employee would. Yep. I mean, we're bringing to the table ourselves, our teams that are doing this kind of work every day. So of course, we're going to have to ramp up, about your business, but we are ready to go. There's no 3-month, just get to know you at all that you have to worry about. The other thing too on that, you don't have to worry about us fitting into your team. We're happy to come in and do marketing for you, and we're going to be, professional. You're a professional team for sure. So you don't have to worry about us fitting in with Bob or Sue or whatnot. We're going to fit in right away, and we're going to get to work with it's probably a pretty quick learning curve that we're going to be able to show you some quick results as well.
Yep, absolutely.
It's I've said this before. It's like, well, what do you think the advertising industry does? Like, it's only been around for 100 years, and none of us do anything in relation to what you do. So we have to have that, 30-day ramp up period. I mean, I was writing for an insurance company, a national insurance company, when I was 27. I didn't know anything about insurance, but they said, hey, jump in and go learn, pile on, get it all in there. And then we were able to write it at a high level. And that's happened ever since. So this is not a new thing. We know how to write for every single industry, and not just us. I'm talking all of us in this category.
Yeah.
Who we can adopt a lot of that high level stuff, because guess what? We don't have to go to school for what you learned. We don't need a PhD. We don't need a degree in what you learned. We need to be able to take what you have and then write it towards your audience, not you. So that's what we're able to do. That's why we can adopt it a lot easier and like you said, a lot faster, because we don't have to be brought up to speed for years.
That's a good point, Dan, because a lot of times business owners talk to their customers like they would another business owner. And your customers don't use your jargon, your buzzwords. They don't know what it means. They don't understand it, and they don't care. They care what you can do for them.
The problems you solve.
Yeah. And we're all close to it. It's, I wouldn't pretend like we all fall into that too. We start talking about this stuff and we say even things like content, and they go, wait, does that mean that you're writing? Like, yeah, like you really sometimes have to step out of your skin. It's not easy to do, but that's why you want to bring on other people.
Yeah.
100%. Now, Dan, you've worked a lot with authors, and you yourself have been a best-selling author. What are you advising
And that
clients?
guy up there too.
Well, you both
couldn't have done it without that guy. He's an author too.
That's lovely. Well, there you go. Well, then maybe both of you can tag team this question. So, What are you advising clients if they're ready to launch that new book or get writing that book now during the pandemic? Is this the same as starting something new? Should they go for it now or should they hold off?
Get off your butt and do it now.
All right.
Well, I say that, but I'm not kidding. I mean, it's doing a book, as Ken and I know. I mean, it's quite an ongoing journey. Let's put it that way. It's not something that you're going to be able to do in 3 months, or, I've seen people do some pretty crazy claims about 6 months, but I think if you really want to do it right, most of the time it does end up being at least a good, 9 months when it's all said and done. All the writing, all the outlining, and actually going to publishing and stuff like that. Even with the easy self-publishing stuff, you got to allow some time for that. So I do think if you want to do something that, say, this is literally right now, is a time when, if you want to get this thing published, if you want to have a book by the end of the year, you got to do it right now. Like, otherwise it's not going to happen. Like, it's rare. And unless it's an easy, very digestible booklet kind of thing, and we're not talking about a book, then that's another story. But if you are trying to do anything that resembles a book that you want to sell on Amazon, that's got to start right now if you want it done this year, if that's a goal. Like, because that process, it doesn't have to be something where you're writing chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's just like what we were saying, you should not be doing that yourself. Absolutely not. Like, there's no way you're going to get it done if you try to do this by yourself. Don't even try. Like, give it to someone, whether it's me or somebody else, who can help you further that along and write it with you, and interview you. But do not try to do this yourself. It's never going to get done this year, maybe even beyond. And that's just from experience. So.
And then what about promoting it? So, launching a book is one thing. It's almost like launching a product. If teams haven't done that before, you launch a product and that feels like, okay, we're done. But, that's day one of promo.
Yeah. Yeah. Ken and I know it's the success of our book with a few other guys, including the guy who's normally on this call.
Who we won't mention.
Yeah, we won't mention his name. Okay. But, we wouldn't be where we were in those immediate days to come if we hadn't reached out in advance to some people and said, hey, this is coming. Like, this is going to go live, so be ready. And in this tight window of when it's really new and fresh, we'd like you to push it out. If you can give us a review on Amazon, hopefully a good one, all of those things, these are the kinds of things you want to do. Our friend and mentor, John Janch, has a thing called Podcast Bookers. And one of those things that he uses that service for is books. So there are a few things that are as powerful as being on a podcast, because it is a lasting thing. It's going to, be in the show notes and things like that. And people are, you're going to have that in your search results for a long time to come.
Yeah.
So, that's something where the promotion, I think people think that, like, it's got to be, you got to go on some expensive, pay a whole lot of money to be on a radio show and stuff like that. No, you don't have to do that stuff. Like, just, it's more about use the people in your circle, because you're going to need them most of all to mobilize this thing. And then you can worry about how you're going to push it out. But, look at things like podcasts. And yes, it's a plan that has to be, developed right in tandem as you're getting close to the end, because you want to think about how that's just going to flow right into the promotion period.
Yep, absolutely. You've got to develop a social media promotion rollout. You've got to, if you're a member of a local chamber, get them to help you kind of do maybe a book launch, to that community, any of the communities that you belong to, it could be a Facebook or a LinkedIn group, if it's within the permissions of those groups, engage those. Writing the book, I think, is actually pretty easy. Launching and promoting the book, especially if you want to attain a bestseller status, that's a lot of hard work. And so, yeah, you have to plan all of that in advance. I do think, I think Dan hit on another key point. If you're going to do a book, the interview process is really critical to getting that book and facilitating that whole process. Don't just let it sit there and be stuck in your head. But you've got to, if you want to be seen as an expert, regardless of what your field is, you've got to write a book.
It's the world's best business card.
It is, absolutely.
The amount of work it takes, it sounds like the ideal pandemic project, to be quite honest.
It is. I mean, it's one of those things that, again, I don't think this is something that you can do yourself, which will, I'm sure, put me at odds with some people later on. That'll be fun. But, but I don't think you're suddenly going to go up on top of a mountain and suddenly write your book and do a little retreat and, come back down with a book. I don't think that's going to happen. This is something that is going to be an ongoing experience. Now, I will say, I've had some times where we've done that interview process with people, and you got to roll with it as far as it's not always going to be chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, sometimes it's like a movie where you're shooting different things and somehow it's weaved together in a book.
Yeah.
Happens.
Yeah.
And I've done that too. I mean, you sometimes you got to go with what's hot, what's in your head at that time and get it down. You just can't. I don't think getting it down by yourself, even if you use recording tools, is going to be enough, because you're still going to have to write it and you're still going to have to do this, just like we said, for the outside world. So having somebody to do this in tandem with you every step of the way is going to be invaluable. I mean, it's the only way I see to do this the right way.
Good. Paul, I want to wrap up with a last question to you. So with all that you've heard today, all the advice for business owners navigating COVID, what are the 1 or 2 recommendations you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, if there's anything COVID has brought to light in the context of this conversation, is that we live in a digital world. I mean, that's nothing new, but probably now more so than we ever have. And it's made people realize that things can be done differently. Like Ken mentions, some of our clients have had to start offering virtual estimates. Now, 2 years ago, that would have been unheard of. Now it's almost the norm. And I think it's important to understand that in the whole digital world, Google's doing some things that I won't get into right now that I think are going to wind up hurting small businesses if you're not prepared for them. But your website is the only thing you own in the digital landscape. Your website is the only thing you own. So you need to build out your digital presence on different platforms and have those linking back to your website so that your website can be the hub of your digital marketing efforts. And I think those, and I don't think a lot of this is going to change, even with, say, we get a vaccine and we're all immune to COVID, whatever. I think a lot of things aren't going to go back to what was normal, because there's a lot of efficiencies that digital can build in, automations and things like that. And people are starting to realize that there are better ways to do things or more efficient ways to do things. And I think some of that's not going to go away because it goes back to business efficiency.
It's I mean, you couldn't be more right about that, Paul, because I think now people realize, like, I heard it this week. I mean, people arguing about networking groups and what's it going to be like when we go back, whatever. But, that's what I mean is we've had networking group experiences, I'm sure, where we have to get in a car, drive an hour, spend 2 hours at the event, drive another hour back, probably get stuck in traffic on one of those times. And suddenly you've blown 4 to 5 hours out of your day. And, for certain things, it may be worth it, but not all the things are going to be able to, make that case. I think these groups have got to look at a hybrid of some sort that has a virtual experience. And I think employers, you better look at a good 30 to 40% at least of your staff not wanting to come back to the office 5 days a week. That is going to happen. If you don't do that, your competitors are going to offer that, because we're not going back to that. We're not going back to 100%. You got to come back 5 days a week. You offer that, you better expect some people to look at other options, because we know now, we know how good it can be and how fast it can be. And we know we can put hours back into our day that can be used for Zoom, regardless of the fatigue we have on Zoom. Zoom is going to be, I'd do Zoom 10 out of 10 times than drive out to somewhere and drive back and somehow have to catch up with work. Like, that's not going to be an easy proposition, and it doesn't have to be. So I definitely think one thing you got to look at right now, and get real comfortable with it, is having a hybrid approach. You can make your people come in for 1 or 2 days a week. That's fine if you got to, but you can't necessarily go back and say 5 days a week to the entire team and force them to do that. I don't think that's going to fly.
Wow.
Well, even if you're doing something like a virtual estimate as a painter or an interior designer or home remodeler or something like that, people now have embraced the convenience of that. They don't have to take off work to be able to pan around a room, with their iPhone or smartphone and show a contractor, here's what I'm thinking, here's what it looks like, here are the dimensions, all that kind of stuff. Some people are never going to want to go back there. So if you're thinking that, hey, I'm a painting contractor, I can give up all this virtual stuff because I really hate using Zoom or FaceTime to do it and stuff, I don't think that that's going to happen. And I think that that would be a mistake. You may see a lot of that activity drop off, but if you're not prepared to offer that moving forward, I think you're putting your business at risk. People like the convenience of communicating digitally. If you're not using text message marketing in a legitimate way for your business, meaning it's got to be a permission-based system, people have to have the ability to opt out. If you're just sending a message back and forth on your cell phone to a customer, and you're not doing that through a text message approved system where they have the ability to opt out and say, stop, I don't want to get any more of your texts, that is not compliant. So you need to realize the true ways that you have to be doing business in a digital economy. And whether you like it or not, it's here, and it's not going to change.
Just on your text messaging, Ken, I have to tell you, you mentioned a few minutes ago, context is so important. I have to tell you a story. So my dentist, which is no one's client here, because we have a colleague that does marketing for dentists, so it's not Ian's client. But anyways, they have adopted text messaging in order to keep in touch with their clients. But the thing is, so I'll go get my teeth cleaned. 30 minutes after I leave, there is a text message reminder for my next appointment in 6 months. I'm like, guys, you're almost there.
Yeah.
I need that a week before my next appointment. So, I mean, that's one of the things, right? You can't just get all these tactics going and just be like, okay, all systems go.
Right.
Context really does matter, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know if I should, tell them that or not. I'm not sure.
Well, hopefully they've learned, but just by watching this episode.
If you give them Joey Coleman, who we've seen before, his book he has a chapter there on dentists, and it's everything that you just said, but before the actual appointment. And if they do that, woo, they'll look like $1 million. But yeah, maybe 6 months out.
Yeah, just change the timing. That's all we have to do, because they're lovely otherwise.
Before instead of the after, maybe.
Just on what you guys were saying with, having some hybrid offer with virtual versus in person, that kind of thing. I don't know if you guys have experienced it, but for me and my marketing company, we have been virtual since way before the pandemic. And that was a way I set up the company so we could find the best available to be working on a project rather than the best available locally. And that was the number one pushback. If we couldn't win a client, it would be, the client really wanted, we want to come down the street and visit your, see all the team in your little office here, and we're not sure about virtual. That's one thing about the pandemic that's been wonderful. It's just kind of blown apart that objection. So anybody that was hesitant to have suppliers that just operate, virtually, this year has seemed to, really build their trust in actually, putting that objection aside.
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
I think the convenience and the time savings that offers is going to be huge. My dryer conked out, so I went down to, there's an appliance outlet store where you can get it for basically half price because there's a little scratch on the side that no one will ever see. And so I went online, and they want you to come down there because they don't offer, you can't bring it back because it shows up and it has a scratch on it. They want you to come down and look at it. And I was kind of peeved because I just wanted to order it and have it show up at my door. I don't care if there's a little scratch on it. It's in a utility closet. No one's going to see it. It's not a fashion statement. But I was irked because I had to actually get in my car and drive down there. And it was 10 minutes away. My God, come on.
Yeah. 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 The joys of living in a suburb makes it a little bit easier to get around. Dan, it might be a little bit more difficult for you.
Yeah. It's, I can say on the subject of office space, right now, ironically, if you go in downtown Chicago, which is only about 2-3 miles from where I am on the north side of town, it's kind of a ghost town right now. Mm-hmm. So because of that, people aren't necessarily gravitating and flocking back to their offices. But I do know in normal times, we are, even before this happened, co-working spaces. I can't speak for every city, but you throw a rock and you can hit a co-working space on a corner in this town. So the idea that you somehow, if you have a company of 10 people, I can tell you for a fact, there's a co-working space that can accommodate you so that you don't have to be there 5 days a week. You can just say, this is our space. Well, if you want to come in a couple days a week or something like that, that's the dedicated space. Mm-hmm. So I would not want to be a commercial real estate person in certain towns right now with that. That's going to put some pressure on them because those options are definitely there for anybody who is a small company of that size, and they will not pay as much for as a traditional office, and they get some pretty good amenities for it too. So it'll be interesting how that evolves.
Having said that, though, there are some tax changes that are going to restrict the ability to write off home offices in the U.S. So that's going to be a little bit of a surprise, I think, to a lot of people. And so,
really?
Yeah.
That's not what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. So I don't know the whole details. I'm not an accountant, but I think that's something that it's going to be a really interesting dynamic because there are going to be changes. People are going to be moving, maybe even across the country or even to different parts of the world. As the world starts to open up and become a little safer. Argentina, I think Buenos Aires is running a marketing campaign right now, to offer space for people to work that are digital nomads, and so they're starting to do that now. We're seeing population shifts, from like Silicon Valley. People are moving to places like Boise, Idaho, or places like that because they don't have to be co-located any longer. Now, these are people that are, maybe information workers, but what that's going to do is that's going to drive demand in different ways for a whole lot of other, types of jobs. And so it's going to be interesting to see how all this shakes out. It's definitely going to be a change. And if you're running a business, you should be thinking about, How is that going to change your business, and what opportunities does that create for your business to take advantage of? And start planning and preparing for that now.
Yeah, people can't get out of California fast enough right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would pick up a book from Jason Free called Rework. I mean, that's been around for a while. But when that guy, he's the mind behind Basecamp, the project management system, and they're right here in Chicago. And I think for a long, long time, they did not have a centralized office. And even as the company was taking off. So there's a lot of interesting ideas that have been around on remote work and how you can, still have all the chemistry that you want to have. I don't think you have to always have an office for that, so. And I think clients are respecting that now a lot more too.
Absolutely. That seems like a good place to wrap up, guys.
Yep.
Thank you so much. And to our listeners, I hope we've dropped some insights and some helpful tips to help you navigate the rest of the COVID pandemic. With that, we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
See you.
See you.